Hello and welcome to the Gooner back again with you guys for another show and another episode of our Raw Reaction series, specifically the Arsenal News Show. Good morning, hope you're doing good, hope you're doing well. Good morning to everybody in the chat box joining us as per. Let's jump in there and see what you guys are saying. Good morning to Matt G, good morning to Thracian, to Olu, to Jonty. We've got Skynet, Viraj, we've got Adam, Marcus, Mr. Ginger Gooner, we've got Jose, G, Norburn, Stevie, Christopher, Afsar. We've got MFB, Rich Carnu, Jamie Baker, and New Crisis in there as well. Or Anna Crucis. Anak Rusus. That's a puzzle. I don't know. I have no idea. Dana, good morning to you. Chris P, good morning to you. Good morning to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us as per. Really appreciate it as always. There's a slight echo, apparently. Why is there a slight echo sound? Is it? Oh, I know why. This is why. Basically, what I was doing was... Hold on, give me a second.
There we go. You should be able to hear me better now. It's because this mic I have sitting on the table, which is part of the headphones that I usually wear. I have two USB ports, as most laptops do. But one of my USB ports is taken up by like a splitter with like the headphones, the mic, the camera, everything else. And I was downloading the clips from the Six-a-Side yesterday for the channel, for the Arsenal Way, and just forgot to plug the mic in. Classic mistake. I'm hoping that yesterday's show on the Arsenal Lounge wasn't done like that the whole time, but I don't... Maybe it was. Now I think about it, maybe it was. But good morning to everybody. I hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Let's jump and always say to the Arsenal Way, do subscribe. I'll be live there this morning with Chris and Bailey talking about all the latest Arsenal news and stuff. So make sure you tune us over there. Or tune into us. That's what I meant. Link in the description as always. And as per, please, if you haven't already, go and donate to Vinny's 5k every day in January run, supporting Macmillan Cancer Support, link as per in the video description. As soon as we get to that 10k, come on, we got to get into that 10k. Anyway, articles that went out yesterday from myself, some interesting pieces talking about the 1 billion Arsenal have spent in the transfer window. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. We've also got updates on Edu and what he will do with the likes of Hector Bellerin and Reece Nelson, and what he needs to do with those players in the summer, and how he's going to get back some of the money for a summer spending spree that has been reported about, as you've all seen. The 180 million war chest, as it's been reported. How much I buy into that is another thing, but we're going to need to make some money back, and we need to improve with our sales. So in certainly looking at some of the players that could make us some money in the summer. And then the benefits of Mohamed Elneny returning to the squads as well was discussed in another piece, as well as a couple of other things as well. We start off though with a congratulations to Mohamed Elneny, who made it into the African Cup of Nations best 11 of the AFCON tournament. So as a congratulations to him. I know SofaScore also did one that Nicolas Pepe was in and that Elneny wasn't. So Elneny and Pepe representing Arsenal fantastically well throughout the tournament. Fair play to those two. Commiserations to Elneny, of course, not winning the competition as a whole. But fair play for getting into the team of the tournament. Gabriel Martinelli was presented with his Professional Footballer Association Player of the Month for December. He obviously won the award above plenty of other players, above the likes of Raheem Sterling, who won the Premier League Player of the Month award during December. So clearly was appreciated by the PFA side of things over the EPL, it seems. And really interestingly, McEnuff, who is one of our youngsters, has joined, as we've gone on loan basically, to Ireland, where he will compete for the rest of the season. And for me, McEnuff is a player that he only played one game this league season for the under-23s. I think he only got like 20-something minutes in the team, which is... you see this with youngsters. Sometimes they stick around a bit longer than others. We just got rid of Iliev, who's now 26. I think he's just signed with a Slovakian team. But we got rid of him in January. But Jordan McEnuff is someone that was thought of really highly, but I'm not sure if it's going to work out for him at Arsenal. And now he's gone on loan to Ireland where he will spend the rest of the season. Not sure how long is left on his contract. I think I can't remember who he signed. I remember the post from Arsenal when he signed his professional deal with the club, and it was with a couple of players who've gone on to do big things. In the context of the youth system. So best of luck to him, though. Fingers crossed he can turn his young Arsenal career around in Ireland and can come back refreshed and ready to crack on with his Arsenal career. Lucas Torreira, meanwhile, it will be in discussions with Arsenal, despite the fact that Arsenal have this kind of clause in the contract that sent him on loan to Fiorentina. Supposedly, Arsenal and Fiorentina are set for talks to discuss a permanent move. That concerns me. I'll be very real with you. It concerns me that they're going to sit down for talks, because if they are going to sit down for talks, it means that would they not be negotiating a lower fee than the clause in his contract? Why would you have to sit down for talks if there's already an agreed clause in the deal? So that news makes me a bit nervous that we're going to get even less for Lucas Torreira than we previously agreed. Look, if Fiorentina don't want to pay the option, we just sold our hands up and say, look, if you don't want to pay the option, you don't get him. It's as simple as that. If you want him, you have to pay for him. And they've just sold Dusan Vlahovic for a ridiculous amount of money. So they have money available. They can buy Lucas Torreira, you would imagine. So why they would try and negotiate? I don't know this for fact, by the way. It just doesn't make any sense to be in talks over a player that there's an option in his contract. Just pay the option. And if you don't pay the option, you don't get the player. It's as simple as that. Maybe we bring him back if you can't afford him and reintegrate him into the squad. Meanwhile, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang came up in the news, of course, yesterday. Quite a lot, in fact, because of the tattoo on his arm that has obviously got and caught interest of a lot of Arsenal supporters. Look, I've been critical of the words that he said, and I still am critical of some of the stuff that he said. But what I will say for Aubameyang is, look, he clearly cares about Arsenal. He's clearly always going to appreciate the time that he spent at the club. But it is time for Arsenal to move on from Aubameyang and to move on from this period of time. 7 million quid still Arsenal are going to be spending on his wages until the end of the season. But Aubameyang, look, it's time in the sun at Arsenal is done, and we need to move on from this, and so does he. But at least he will hopefully remember back on his Arsenal years fondly. And he got a couple of trophies as well. Pablo Mari has been speaking about his time at Arsenal since moving on loan to Udinese. He says, I haven't had any luck at Arsenal, but when I've been on the pitch, I think I've given a very good level. In the end, there comes a point where you have to make decisions. I don't blame him for going on loan. He wasn't getting regular minutes. He's, in his mid to late 20s now. He's going to be wanting to play as much as feasibly possible. So going on loan made sense, and I don't blame him for that at all. I'm just reading the comment section. But Pablo Mari is a player that when he played for us, there was a couple of good performances, there's a couple of bad performances. The Brentford game wasn't good, the Chelsea game wasn't good either, but I don't hold those against him. He cost us more than what we should have paid. He came in at a time when we needed depth at centre-back, and hopefully in the summer, after a loan move to Udinese, he can get us a significant transfer fee in the summer because he's still under a decent level of contract. So you'd hope that we would be able to get a decent fee for him and at least recoup what we paid in the summer after the loan fee. That was I think the loan fee ended up being more than the transfer fee. I think the loan fee was something like 7 million quid and the transfer fee was like 5 million quid. So it was a little bit of a strange one when we signed him from Flamengo. Anyway, let's move on to our penultimate story. Now, a few of you tweeted me this. I woke up to a few tweets saying, Tom, Bruno Guimaraes has been talking about Arsenal. And I read the story and the interview, and I read the piece in the Telegraph. I don't think he addresses Arsenal. Now, you'd have to tell me in the chat box if this is if I've missed a quote, but he was asked about Arsenal. He was asked why he chose Newcastle over Arsenal, but he never referenced Arsenal. Only the interviewee or interviewer, I suppose, did. He says, we are definitely going to be a club that is going to be a big power in world football. He said when asked why he had rejected interest from Arsenal to sign from Newcastle. By the way, Arsenal never bid. All these stories, like Arsenal were interested. Arsenal, we've been tracking him for a while, but Arsenal never bid. Never bid. As far as we're aware, there was no bid that went to Lyon from Arsenal whatsoever. We did not move in to Lyon and say, here's an offer for Bruno Guimaraes. He didn't choose Newcastle over Arsenal. He chose Newcastle over no one. No one else came in for him. Arsenal had interest in him, but never bid for him during this January window. So any questions saying why he chose Newcastle over Arsenal, it just wasn't there. The line from the Telegraph says the Brazil international had been watched by most of the elite European clubs, but Newcastle were able to persuade Lyon to sell in January before others, including Arsenal and Juventus, could make their move. Like in the same article, it says it was before Arsenal and Juventus could make... And let's be real. If Arsenal wanted him, they could have got him. They had the money. They bid a significant amount to try and negotiate with Isaac to get his price down. If they wanted to spend the money on Bruno Guimaraes, and I believe they should have, like they absolutely should have signed him. I wanted to sign Bruno Guimaraes. He's a fantastic player, and he's going to do... I hope that... do I hope he does wonders at Newcastle? Because I kind of want him to go down. Just because of all the salty Newcastle fans and a lot of my tactical breakdown videos of Bruno over the last couple of weeks that I keep popping up on my screen. It's ridiculous. Layla says, respectfully, Tom, what is your problem? Players are not slaves and should be able to speak. When have I said anything about this? When have I said anything about Bruno Guimaraes? I suppose you're asking about Hamza Maitland-Niles and now Aubameyang. I disagree with what Aubameyang said. I don't think Aubameyang needed to bring up Arteta in his unveiling of that. But anyway, we're going off on a tangent. Bruno Guimaraes, we never bid for him. We never went in for him in January. Newcastle went in for him. They got the player. We should have gone in for him. He's a very good player. But, it is what it is. He didn't address Arsenal. The interviewer apparently asked him about Arsenal, but he didn't actually name Arsenal in this, so I'm not going to lose my head about it whatsoever. It is what it is. Moving on to the final story of the day. Actually, penultimate story, I suppose. I've got to talk about our €1 billion reveal. Christopher Nkunku is set to remain with RB Leipzig. Their executives have come out and said that he will be with them next season, despite interest from Arsenal previously. Arsenal tried to sign him from PSG in, I want to say, 2020. The transfer window where we just couldn't really bring anyone in. And he will remain with RB Leipzig. I think it was actually 2019, that we tried to sign him in January. Didn't happen. We signed Denis Suarez instead, and it wasn't a particularly great end to the season for Unai Emery, who lost in the Europa League final and, in my opinion, cost us the top 4 place with silly rotation towards the end of that Premier League season as well. But Nkunku will be remaining with RB Leipzig into next season, so any hope Arsenal had of signing him or reigniting their interest in the Frenchman is certainly down the pan, it seems. And lastly, the last story to talk about is this €1 billion spending that Arsenal have put themselves in, basically. And in fact, I've got the figures on my screen. In fact, I'll share my screen with you so you can see it. I'll just share Chrome tab. This one? This looks like the one. Yes. So, in terms of the Big 5 leagues, since the summer of 2012, this comes from the CIES Football Observatory, Arsenal rank 11th in all of world clubs of how much, or in the Big 5 leagues, I should say, of how much has been spent over those years, spending €1.29 million and only earning back €446 million. In the context of the Premier League, Arsenal are third. They've spent more than Everton, Aston Villa, who, by the way, interestingly, are 4th and 5th in this list of how much has been spent. Oh, sorry, that's not true. Let me go on it again. Arsenal rank in terms of spent 5th behind Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea and Manchester City. When it comes down to in terms of how much net has been spent, Arsenal ranks stupidly amongst this list for kind of the net spending. But Arsenal rank 5th. Here we go, balance. Yeah, so Arsenal are 3rd in terms of their net spend, €583 million compared to Man United's 1.75 billion and Manchester City's €984 million. Next is Everton and Aston Villa, who are in the 400s. Chelsea are just in the 400s because Chelsea have spent 1.614 billion, euros, and they've earned 1.201 billion euros. Chelsea have done fantastically well in the market in buying and selling, and we know that they've used the low market to their advantage. But Arsenal need to sort this out because we have talked for time after time after time about how much Arsenal have I've needed to spend. You spend, we spend. A good friend Mo, who was behind lots of the net spend jokes and stuff like that. But Arsenal's spending has been ridiculous over the last 9, I suppose, years, since 2012, since the last 9 years, our spending has been absolutely ridiculous. We've invested a stupid amount of money into players that have not progressed us forwards in any shape or form. 40 minutes. I mean, I wrote the piece that came out this morning, and I listed off all the players that we have bought that have not reflected their transfer fee. Let me talk you through this list because it's ridiculous. Callum Chambers, 18.21 million. Look, Callum Chambers left for 2 odd million quid. He's not been reflective of that 18.21. You can say he's been an okay player, but 18 million quid. You know, even in today's money, that would have got you Artur Cabral in this market. Danny Welbeck, £18 million. Gabriel Paulista, £13.5 million. Matteo Debuchy, £13.5 million. Petr Cech, £12.6 million. Granit Xhaka, £40.5 million. Skodran Mustafi, £36.9 million. Lucas Perez, £18 million. Takuma Asano, £3.6 million. £3.6 million for Takuma Asano, left for nothing, or near to nothing. Alexandre Lacazette, £47.7 million. Henrik Mkhitaryan left a £30.6 million deal in which we received that money back for Alexis Sanchez in kind of a swap deal. But that money's on the books at £30.6 million according to Transfermarkt. Lucas Torreira, £25.79 million. Bernd Leno, £22.5 million. Socrates, £14.4 million. Nicolas Pepe, £72 million. Pablo Mari, £12.6 million, including loan and buy fee. William Saliba I've put on this list because we've not seen him yet. £27 million. These players have not reflected the value that we paid for them. William Saliba hasn't been given a chance yet, in fairness to him, but I put him on this list because it's an amount of money that we've outlaid on a player that has not, we've not seen a return on that investment yet for Arsenal. Not his fault, but he still makes this list. And this doesn't include the wages of those players. It doesn't include the wages of players like Stefan Lichtsteiner, Sead Kolasinac, Cedric Suarez, Willian. Doesn't include any of the wages of those players, and yet that comes to a total of £427.4 million spent on players that did not progress us, did not move us forwards. I don't think those players have taken us to the steps that we need to. Players like Aubameyang, I feel, reflected their value. People will disagree with me about certain players, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and feel free to leave a comment in the comment section of any players that you do disagree with. I don't think Bernd Leno, at £22.5 million, has reflected his value, because at 29 years of age, if he reflected his value, we'd sell him for that same amount. But we're not going to do that. We're going to sell him for about 12 million quid. And we spent £24 million in the end to buy a goalkeeper that's better. So how can anyone sit there and tell me that £22.5 million was worth it for Bernd Leno when we've had to spend £24 million a couple of seasons later to bring in someone better? And then we're going to let Bernd Leno go for 12 odd million quid. I don't see how that argument works when you've had to spend more on a goalkeeper. And to be fair, sell a goalkeeper in Emi Martinez, who I believe ended up probably being the better keeper of the two. So I just don't get what the argument was. Thoratian says Torreira was considered a good buy. He just didn't settle in England. But again, we can have these comments about players, but the money that we spent on Torreira has not been returned. We have not seen a reflection of that investment on that player. No matter what we think about the players as individuals, and no matter what their actual quality may be when they go elsewhere, the return that Arsenal have got on that investment, regardless of the player, we haven't seen a return. And that's why I get, not defensive, but that's why I'm appreciative of what we did in 2021 and in the summer of 2021, is that we've invested money in 6 players, 150 million quid's worth of players, who I feel at this moment in time are reflecting that investment, that will make do on that investment. I love what I think that Ramsdale, I think that Tomiyasu have definitely exceeded that value so far. It may dip. I mean, Torreira, I thought, exceeded his value in his first season, but it can dip. But at this moment in time, I think they're reflecting very well on their value. Martin Ødegaard looks an absolute steal for 30 million quid. To think that we would have had to pay 80 million pounds for James Maddison, and we probably would have had to pay upwards of at least 70 million to get him, and we paid nearly a third of that price on Martin Ødegaard looks ridiculously good business. And whilst we complain and we moan about the January window and the fact that we didn't bring any players in, and I sat on the Arsenal lounge last week on deadline day and I moaned about the fact that we didn't bring anyone in, because I do think there are players that moved during this window that would have improved the squad and helped us towards our targets. Whilst I am critical of those moves for players that would have progressed the squad, I don't think there was really anyone available during the January window that we could get for a reasonable and reflective figure of their quality that would have improved the first 11. We talk about Isaac, but he wasn't worth £75 million. I'm glad that we didn't panic buy. I'm glad that we didn't overspend. I'm glad that we didn't do the silly things that we've done in the past. And that's why I'm still very much reflecting on that window and thinking, if it sets us up for another summer window where we invest smartly, getting players for the right significant figure, don't go big on big wages of a player that's only going to regress from here, then I'm more positive about the things that we do. So that's where I'm at right now with the squads. That's where I feel about the team and how much we've spent, and that we're doing things in the last 18 months to change the mistakes from 2012 onwards to try and turn things around. The risk that we have is that we have an inexperienced coach in Mikel Arteta that's leading this project. If we had a very experienced Antonio Conte style coach, I would be more confident about where we're going. Although saying that, Conte in himself has spent a lot of money on players and then left teams. But the issue with an inexperienced coach like Arteta having this role is that there is unpredictability about it. There isn't the same amount of guarantees as that you might have from other coaches. That's the issue. But there are lots of things to be positive about with Arteta's tenure and with the identification alongside Edu that we've made mistakes in the market and that we needed to move forwards. To be fair, Neil, Bruno Guimaraes is the exception on this. Bruno Guimaraes, for me, at £40 million, is a player that we could have got that would have improved the squad. However, we all know that the striker position was the priority, and if they couldn't get the striker in they wanted, they were always going to struggle to invest heavily on a midfielder. And by the time that they got to the end of the window and that the Vlahovic kind of situation was dead, Bruno was already on his way to Newcastle. So that's kind of the issue with that. Anyway, that's my rant and rave about that. We're going to jump to your questions in the chat box. So if you have got any, throw them in now and we'll go through as many of them as feasibly possible. Let's jump into the chat. Lucas says, only profit we have made is of Joe Willock and Emi Martinez as well, because obviously we signed him for ridiculously nothing and sold him for like 18 to 20 million pounds. So Emi Martinez and Joe Willock are the only things that we've really got to show for our sales. And that's another area that we need to improve on. We need in the summer to get a decent fee for Bert Leno. We need to get a decent fee for Hector Bellerin, for Reece Nelson, for Ainsley Maitland-Niles. We need to get good money for these players. We may not be able to, but over the next decade, all the way through to 2030, Arsenal need to be a team where they're no longer the laughingstock of the sales market. Arsenal need to be in a position where they are moving players on for significant figures that progress what they can do in the transfer market instead of just allowing players to leave for free. I don't have too much of an issue with the players that we've let go for nothing because they were brought in by a previous regime that overspent on those players in a COVID hit market now. You weren't going to get money for Aubameyang. You weren't going to get money for Socrates, for Mustafi, for Ozil with the length of time on their contract, with the situation that they are in. You just weren't going to get the money for them. There are things that we've made mistakes with. Mavropanos, for example, is one. Guendouzi, you could argue that at the time that we let him go to Hertha Berlin on loan, still was ostracised, was exiled, any word you want to use. But 9 million quid's not reflective of his qualities. Absolutely worth upwards of £20 million without a shadow of a doubt. But the situation meant that we weren't able to get any more than that. Viraj, Nicolas Pepe, Mikel Arteta's press conference is tomorrow. So hopefully we'll get an update on Tomiyasu then. And we'll have our preview show tomorrow evening as well. By the way, tonight we will be doing another Twitter space. I'm trying to coin the phrase TGT Twitter Tuesdays or something like that. Triple T. So we're going to do TGT Twitter Space Tuesdays if the best as I can. I really enjoyed the first one we did. So if you're around this evening, probably about 7-ish, we'll probably do our Twitter Space then, 7 till 8 or onwards. We'll see how many people tune in and how long it goes on for. But that's when we're going to try and do our Twitter Spaces. So 7 o'clock. I'll be tweeting it out earlier in the day so you know what it's going to be so you can tune in or get involved. But please do. Thracian King says, who is going to pay 10 million plus for Reece Nelson? No one will. Well, let's see what happens in the rest of his loan deal at Feyenoord. If it goes well, who knows? Maybe someone will pay a decent figure. Aya says, what worries me is the priority of a striker over a midfield when Arsenal clearly needs a centre mid that controls tempo besides Xhaka. No striker will make an impact if our midfield can't get the ball to him. I do disagree. I think the striker is absolutely the priority. I think you look at the game against Manchester City, Xhaka and Partey played brilliantly together that game. Other than obviously the Xhaka penalty, but just looking at the performance of the players prior to the penalty being given away, it showed what that pair can do. They did it again in the North London derby earlier in the season as well. So we have that pairing that can work. We have Lokonga as backup if we need him, but the striker is the problem. Our strikers have scored 3 goals in the Premier League between them, the ones that we have. That's not enough. That's nowhere near enough. Striker is absolutely the priority for me. Layla says, should a player bought for 50 million be a better player than a player bought for 60 million? Obviously not. It depends. Value is reflective of a player's contract length, of a player's age, of a player's quality, potential, of the player's personality. Like if they've got a history of disciplinary issues, that's going to lower their fee, even if they're better than a player. So the value of a player regarding the money that they're paid for doesn't always reflect how good they are. A £50 million player may be better than a £60 million player, depending on the length of contract, depending on the player's age, depending on their potential. So that's always something you need to take into account. Football isn't binary. It's not one value is worth one player. Diallo says, Tom, which of the young academy boys do you see breaking into the first team next year? Any good fullbacks coming through? Yeah, Ryan Alabiosu is a really interesting player. Plays in kind of wing back, can play right back, but he is very offensive, can play right wing. If we change to a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-1-2, I could see Alabiosu maybe getting an opportunity at right wing back. Very interesting player. 7 assists. He's now on loan at Crewe for the second half of the season, so let's see how he gets on in League One. Troy says, do you think if we sell Holding next season, we will bring in a new centre-back to use one of the youngsters as fourth choice? I think that if we sell Holding, we will bring someone in. I don't think Omar Rekic is ready yet to play. So I think that we would bring someone in, but Saliba is still returning, of course. So we need to remember that, absolutely. Adam says, is the relationship with Leon strained? With a reported 20% sell-on fee, was Bruno worth it, even if we were probably being able to negotiate a better deal than Newcastle? Yeah, look, sell-on clauses are always inserted into, pretty much these days, clubs always want to put sell-on clauses. Anderlecht would have put a sell-on clause into Lokonga. I imagine that Benfica would have done the same thing for Nuno. It's just common practice that sell-on clauses are inserted into deals these days. Bruno would have been worth it. And look, a sell-on clause doesn't mean you have to sell the player either. So you can keep them. And once you agree a new contract with them, it's a very different thing. So I don't think there's too much of an issue had we have bought him in this window whatsoever. Neil says, are fans not trying to find excuses for Arsenal's lack of transfers for false positivity? No, I don't think so. I think I think there is no excuse for not signing someone like a Cabral, not signing someone like a Bruno Guimaraes. But I think there is absolutely fair game to point out that Arsenal didn't make the mistakes of overspending or panicking. And if they weren't sure about a player, they didn't just panic and get them anyway, or make a mistake in the market in regards to the buying of anyone that they shouldn't have done. So no, Neil, I don't think so. I think people use the word excuses far too liberally and inaccurately, to be honest. A lot of people use the word excuse to try and justify their own argument, when actually an excuse is a genuine reason given by someone in an argument. Dersh says, we need to move Xhaka on and replace him with better. I definitely agree. In the summer, we should be replacing Xhaka with somebody better. Fingers crossed we can. Vuk said, it's not our money. That is the problem of club management and it hinders our club's progress. I sometimes say it's not our money. That's how I justify things. But when you reflect on those deals and think £75 million for Alexander Isak, no thank you. He's not worth. I'm not going to pay more than I've ever paid for a player on someone who scored 4 La Liga goals this season. 17 last season, and broke into the team the season before. But I'd be willing to invest a certain figure on a player that's got potential like Isak, but I would not be willing to invest nearly more than double his market value. It's just not worth it. It's just simply not worth it. Thracian says, Tom, you've gone against your own argument about selling values. If it is dependent on age, contract length, etc., then you can't complain about a lot of our business. I absolutely can, Thracian. In fact, what I'll do for you is I'll go through each one of those players that I just talked about. Let me scroll up. Callum Chambers, 18.21 million, never reflected that potential that we invested 18.21 in. I don't think he improved, to be honest, that much from the point at which we signed him. I never really saw a huge track of progress from him. Danny Welbeck, £18 million signed. 18 million quid for a backup striker is something that you can buy you an improvement on your forwards. And I mean, Danny Welbeck came in when Olivier Giroud was our striker, who we signed for about 12 million quid. That's an example of business that's worth the investment. Olivier Giroud scored over 100 goals for Arsenal. 12 million quid. That's a good return. Danny Welbeck for 6 million quid more than Giroud, not worth it. Gabriel Paulista, £13.5 million. We could have spent that on someone that was more consistent, that didn't get sent off in important matches at Stamford Bridge. We could have done better on the 13.5 million. Matteo Debuchy, unfortunately got injured, but factually did not return on that investment. Petr Cech at £12.6 million. Did he really improve us more than what Szczesny was giving us? Was it really worth moving Szczesny out when Petr Cech came in and didn't improve our goalkeeping situation? Not for me anyway. Didn't improve on the goalkeeping situation all that much. Granit Xhaka, £40.5 million. Need I say more? Skodran Mustafi, £36.9 million. Need I say more? Lucas Perez, £18 million. Didn't play him. Couldn't return on the investment. Takuma Asano, £3.6 million. Alexandre Lacazette came in as a 25-year-old for £47.7 million. In that moment, you may have said his market value was £47.7 million. But he has not reflected that. He has not reflected that amount of money. More than we paid for Mesut Ozil just a few years prior. He has not reflected that value, in my opinion, at all. Lucas Torreira for £25.79 million. He's leaving a couple of years later for 12 to 13 million quid. 3 years later. And he's in his mid-20s. Bernd Leno, a 26-year-old when we bought him, for 22.5 million. We're selling him at 29, which is peak years for a goalkeeper, for probably half that price, if that. And we've had to spend 24 million pounds to buy a replacement for him of a younger player. So I'm sorry, Thracian, but I think it was Thracian that threw the question in. But it's not going back against my own argument. Values is dependent on lots of things, but they still need to be reflective of what the return that you get on those players. If you don't get a return on those players, then you've not had a good investment. Aya says, a mid is more important because our biggest issue this season has been creativity. I think our biggest issue this season has been goals. Saka, Martinelli, Ødegaard, Smith Rowe, we've created chances. We've not taken them. Look at the Burnley game. Lacazette scores that chance. We're in it. Lacazette scores that chance against Liverpool at 1-0 down and we're back in the League Cup semi-final. Aubameyang's missed a ridiculous amount of chances. Think about the Brighton game. Smith Rowe could have scored in that moment when he was through clean on goal, or could have played in someone else, although to be fair, I think that's harsh. Even I argue that was harsh. But we've created chances. We've just not scored them. And when you're a team with low XG, with a team with a low chance creation, and low XA and low XG, I'm sorry, but a striker does make a whole host of difference. A whole host of difference. Let's scroll down a little bit more. See if anyone's coming back about these arguments. Vinny says, Tom, can you review our signings from the last two seasons and give your view on if the money looks to be better spent? Certainly something I'd be absolutely up for doing. Yeah, look, Thracian King, it might be in a season's time that I look back on the Partey deal and say that it is. Difference is that I'm looking at this from the perspective of where we are right now. Partey, there's not enough evidence for me to suggest that it wasn't worth the money or that it is. If we get into the top four this season, and Thomas Partey has been a mainstay in our midfield and has been the best midfielder at the club this season, which there is an argument to suggest that he could be up there, but I think that probably highlights how poor our midfield's been in general, to be fair. I think Sambi Lokonga's arguably got an argument to be our best midfielder this season. But Partey still stands out in plenty of games. If we end up in the top four and Partey is our best midfielder, then the £50 million you'd have to argue has been worth that investment because he's taken us to the level that we wanted to get to. Maya says, how did you reach 12 million for Leno? That's just kind of the figures that are being banded around. He's got a year left on his deal. We're not going to renew. The clubs that are in for him are looking at it about that figure. That's my estimate. It's not based on anything specifically. It's just an estimate of what I think he's going to go for. Who's going to pay 20 million for a year left on Bernd Leno's contract? Camille says, do you think Aziz is Mikel's plans? Unlike other recalled players, he didn't go back out on loan, and I don't think he would have been hard to find a club for. I think that Aziz will be in his plans next season, maybe, but this summer, I think that, or this January, I just think they wanted to ensure that he was playing regularly, and he will do for the under-23. So there is that as well. Afsar says, who is going to score the goals for the next 17 games? Well, hopefully, Lacazette turns around and has a blinder of a second half of the season. That's what we got to hope for. That's what we got to pray that we have that. That we really hope that we've got a Lacazette that's motivated, even though he's got 6 months left on his contract. That's why I think that we made a mistake of going for someone like an Artur Cabral. I really think we should have gone for someone like that, just to bring in a bit of extra firepower. We're losing Nketiah and Lacazette. What's wrong with bringing in the second striker during this January window? I really don't think that there is any issue with that. We're going to wrap things up there. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in as per. Leave your comments in the comment section below about what you think about what I've said. If you've only listened to a portion of what I said, maybe go and watch back the whole show. I often find that comments are answered by stuff that I say in the show that have been said 10 minutes prior. So do take the time to listen to all the opinions before jumping on with a huge critical comment in the comment section. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new. I'll be live on the Arsenal Way in just under an hour's time. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and it always is. I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal, and join me in the evening for the Twitter space, 7 o'clock UK time. See you soon, guys. Have a great day. And as always, up the Arsenal.